There is something I must tell you before we begin. The man who would become one of the most influential teachers of the 20th century, the man whose lectures on consciousness have been read by millions, that man once stood in a rented room in New York City with no money, no prospects, and a world that seemed completely indifferent to his desire to change. That man was Neville Goddard, and for 5 years I taught him, not what most teachers teach, not discipline or strategy or the careful management of resources. What I taught him were habits of consciousness. 5 specific, forbidden shifts in the way a man relates to money, shifts so contrary to the conventional wisdom of the world that most people, when they first hear them, immediately reject them. The world will teach you to track your money, to budget it, to manage it carefully, to save a percentage, to make only smart, logical investments, to measure everything by what the numbers say. These are not wrong instructions for a man who wishes to remain exactly where he is, but they will never move you from one level of life to another. They cannot, because they are all instructions for how to manage a state of consciousness, not how to change it. What I am about to share with you are the 5 habits I gave Neville, the habits through which an unemployed dancer with empty pockets transformed himself into a man who moved through the world as though the universe itself was his partner. A man whose financial struggle did not gradually ease, it ended. Completely, permanently, at the root. Watch carefully. Every one of these habits will feel wrong to you at first. That is exactly how you will know they are real. Habit number 1. Stop trying to attract wealth from where you are. Start inhabiting the consciousness of the person who already has what you desire. I want to tell you about a story Neville documented in his lecture, A Power Called the Law. A friend of his was an advertising executive. His employer's most important client, a major international industry, was failing, declining quarter after quarter. The men at the top of that organization, 20 multi-millionaires on the board, were men who believed themselves to be reasonable, ethical, strategically brilliant. They had done everything the logical mind said to do. Nothing had worked. Neville's friend sat down and asked himself a single question. If imagining creates reality, how do I apply this at this scale? His answer was radical. He would not advertise that success was possible. He would advertise from the premise that it was already an accomplished fact. He would run the entire campaign from the end result, not toward it. He presented this to the board of 20. They were resistant. Their ethical sensibilities were offended by the very idea. But he persuaded them to let him proceed. The first quarter results came in. That industry had not merely slowed its decline, it had reversed completely. And the net profits, not gross, net for that first quarter were $75 million more than the same quarter the previous year. Neville said, "These wise men, with their wonderful ethical codes, they allowed it. They saw the money in the bank." This is the first habit, not to work toward the outcome, not to plan in the direction of the outcome, to occupy the consciousness of the outcome already realized, to think, speak, and move from the end, not toward it. The advertising executive did not imagine the industry recovering. He assumed it already had. He built his entire strategy from within that assumption, and reality had no choice but to conform. I ask you now, in your financial life, are you moving toward the outcome you desire, or are you living from within it? The gap between those two positions is the entire difference between struggle and freedom, between the old consciousness and the new one. Begin today to occupy the consciousness of the person for whom the financial reality you desire is simply normal, not the person hoping for it, not the person working toward it, the person for whom it has already arrived. Habit number 2. Never negotiate with what the outer world shows you. The outer evidence is not final, it is a report from the past. In The Law and the Promise, Neville documented the case of a man identified only as TK. This man sat in Neville's audience and admitted openly that he was completely broke. He had heard Neville teach that imagining creates reality, and he decided to test it in the most specific, concrete way he could. He chose a very particular imaginal scene. He imagined himself standing at the Caliente racetrack, sorting a set of winning tickets. He imagined the physical sensation of holding them. He felt the goosebumps spread across his skin as he realized he had each of the 6 winning selections. Then he imagined the cashier handing him a large sum of money, which he placed, in his imagination, beneath his shirt. He enacted this scene every single night for 3 weeks, falling asleep within it. Then he physically traveled to the racetrack. Every detail of his imaginal drama came to pass. The winners came in exactly as he had imagined. The only variation was this: the cashier gave him a check for $84,000 instead of currency. Now, I want you to understand what TK's outer circumstances had been saying before this happened. They were saying, "You are broke." They were saying, "This is not realistic." They were saying, "Men in your financial position do not receive $84,000. TK did not negotiate with any of that. He acknowledged his current circumstances and then returned, night after night, to the assumption of the desired end. He did not manage the problem. He did not work around the problem. He imagined past it entirely directly into the fulfilled desire and then fell asleep there. This is the second habit. When your bank account shows you a number you do not want to see, that is not a verdict about your future. It is a shadow of your past consciousness showing up in your present. When circumstances say it is not possible, when logic says you cannot afford this, when the outer world presents the most convincing case for staying exactly where you are, you do not negotiate with that evidence. You acknowledge it briefly, the way you acknowledge weather on a day you have already decided to travel. And then you return your imagination quietly, persistently, without drama, to the specific felt reality of the desire fulfilled. The outer world cannot resist an inner world that refuses to accept it as final. Before I share the third habit, I want to pause for a moment. If what you are hearing is beginning to shift something in you, if you can feel, even faintly, the difference between these two ways of relating to money, then I have something for you. In the comments below, write one word right now: reset. When you do, you will receive the Manifest Reset, a free guide containing 5 specific, practical shifts to help you return to the state of the wish fulfilled when doubt comes in. For the moments when the outer world feels too loud, for the days you fall out of your assumed state and cannot find your way back, one of those resets will show you how to stop forcing the feeling when manifestation feels fake and hollow. Another will teach you the precise difference between letting go and giving up. A third will show you exactly what to do in the moment when what you see contradicts what you are trying to assume. These are not motivational tools. They are practical, consciousness-level techniques built entirely on these same principles. Your way back to center when the old state tries to reclaim you. Comment reset below right now. Get the guide and let us continue. Habit number 3. Change what you are saying on the inside before you ever try to change what you see on the outside. The outer world, your income, your financial circumstances, the number in your bank account is what Neville described as frozen inner speech. It is the visible form of what you have been saying, silently, habitually, on the inside, not what you have been hoping, not what you have been wishing. What you have been saying in the running commentary of your own mind, in the tone of voice you use when you think about money, in the quiet assumptions you carry through every ordinary day. Neville documented a remarkable case in The Law and the Promise. A gentleman rose in his audience one evening to share what had happened. He had come out of the armed forces after the Second World War with take-home pay of $25 a week. After 10 years, he was earning $600 a month. He was not destitute, but he was clearly fixed at a particular level of income with no visible movement upward. At that point, he read Neville's book, Awakened Imagination, and began practicing the chapter on revision daily. Every evening, he would review his day and revise any moment that had not reflected the financial reality he desired. He would rewrite his inner conversations. He would replace the voice of the man at $600 a month with the inner voice of the man he intended to become. 2 years later, he returned to Neville's audience. His income had become equal to that of the President of the United States. Not incrementally higher, not somewhat better, equal to the highest fixed compensation in the nation. And the only thing that had changed was his inner speech. His outer circumstances had not given him permission. His industry had not suddenly opened up. No inheritance had arrived. The world had not changed first. He had changed the conversation he was having with himself daily, consistently, without apology, and 2 years later the outer world had no choice but to reflect a completely different man. This is the third habit. Catch what you are saying on the inside about money. Not once. Every day. Revise it. Replace the inner voice of lack with the inner voice of the man or woman you intend to become. The outer world is always, without exception, a reflection of what has been happening internally. Change what is happening internally, and the outer has no choice but to follow. Habit number 4. Imagine from within the fulfilled end, not toward it. Let your consciousness stand inside the outcome, not outside looking at it. I want to return to Neville's documentation in The Law and the Promise and tell you the story that followed TK's account, because it demonstrates something even more precise about how this works. A man identified as AJF heard TK's story. He did not simply feel inspired. He decided to test whether he could replicate the result, and more importantly, whether he could prove to himself that it was not an accident. He constructed a specific imaginal scene. In it, he walked into 2 different banks. In the first, he saw his statement showing a balance of $10,000. In the second, he saw $15,000. Then in his imagination, he walked to his desk at home and counted his winnings into 12 separate piles, $1,000 in each of 11 piles, 533 in the last. His complete imaginary accounting totaled $36,533. He enacted this scene 3 times a day for less than 1 month. Then he traveled to the Caliente racetrack. What happened there contained a detail that Neville found extraordinary. While making out his tickets, AJF inexplicably duplicated 6 tickets. He could not explain why he did it. And in the 10th selection, he copied 1 ticket twice, which he called a mistake. At the end of the 9th race, a trainer attempted to scratch the winning horse. The race stewards refused. His total winnings, $36,788, $255 more than the exact accounting he had imagined. Neville's words about this story. How subtle were the threads that led to his goal. What AJF had done was not visualized broadly. He had placed himself inside a specific, completed financial picture. He had felt the weight of the counting. He had seen the numbers on the statement. He had not imagined receiving money. He had imagined already having it, already managing it, already standing inside the world where it was simply real. The imaginal act must be from within the fulfilled state, not the act of receiving, but the act of possessing, not the moment of getting, but the ordinary moment after, when what you desired is simply your life now. This is the 4th habit. Stand inside your desired financial reality in imagination. Walk through it, count it, see the numbers, feel what it feels like to be the person for whom this is simply Tuesday. Not the excitement of getting there, the ordinariness of already being there. That ordinary feeling is the signal that consciousness has fully entered the new state. And when consciousness enters, reality follows. Habit number 5. Let abundance arrive in ways that are larger than what you imagined. Do not limit the channels. In his lecture, Imagination Fulfills Itself, Neville shared a letter from a woman who had been practicing this principle on a very practical, everyday level. When she received a $62 car repair bill, she did something quiet and deliberate. As she signed the credit slip, she imagined it was a check she was signing, because she told Neville she never signs a check unless the money is there to cover it. In that single private act, she assumed the bill was already paid. Months passed. No payment request came. Then, just before the statement arrived, an unexpected referral commission appeared from a former broker she had recommended to a stranger months earlier and completely forgotten about. The amount, $68, $6 more than the bill. She also had a worn chair in her home that needed reupholstering at a cost of $87. Rather than stress about finding the money, she simply imagined the chair as already newly covered. Every time she sat in it, she saw it as it would be. Every time she thought of it from another room, she saw it as done. A neighbor's child came to stay with her family for 5 weeks during a medical emergency. When the neighbor returned and asked what she owed, the woman said jokingly that someday, if the neighbor ever had an old worn-out $100 bill she did not know what to do with, she could give it to her. The neighbor reached into her billfold and produced exactly that, a folded $100 bill she and her husband had already decided to give away. It covered the chair's reupholstering and left $13 to spare. Neville returned to this image again and again across his lectures. Abundance, when allowed to move freely, always arrives pressed down and running over, always slightly more than the exact amount imagined, always through channels that could not have been predicted or arranged. This is the fifth habit, and it is the most subtle of all. Stop limiting the channels through which abundance can arrive. Stop deciding in advance what form it must take, what person must bring it, what industry must provide it. The imagination does not need your management of the how. It only needs your faithful occupation of the end. What the woman with the car repair bill did was not complicated. She did not attempt to control how the $62 would come. She simply assumed it was already covered, and then she went about her day. She inhabited the consciousness of a woman whose bills are met, and that consciousness drew the exact provision, plus more, through a path she never would have thought to arrange. That is the habit. Assume it is provided. Do not monitor how. Do not restrict which door it arrives through. Simply live as the person whose financial life is already what you desire it to be, and trust that the intelligence that moves through all things knows channels and pathways that your logical mind has not yet imagined. These 5 habits occupying the consciousness of the outcome already realized, refusing to accept outer evidence as final, changing your inner speech daily, imagining from within the fulfilled state rather than toward it, and releasing control of the channel. These are not 5 separate techniques. They are 5 faces of one truth. The truth I gave Neville. The truth that, over years of dedicated practice, ended his financial struggle not gradually but completely, at the root, permanently. And they can do the same for you. Which of these 5 habits is speaking most directly to where you find yourself right now? Which one, if you practiced it seriously for the next 2 weeks, would begin to change something that has been fixed in you for too long? Let me know in the comments below. Tell me which habit you are going to work with first. And before you leave, I want you to do one thing right now. Comment the word reset in the comments below. When you do, you will receive the Manifest Reset Guide, completely free. It contains 5 resets built on everything I have taught you today. Practical tools for the exact moments when you lose your footing, when the outer world gets loud, when you fall out of the assumed state and need to find your way back. Reset number 1 shows you how to stop forcing the feeling when the assumption feels fake. Reset number 2 shows you the precise difference between letting go and giving up. Reset number 3, the one that has helped more people than any other, teaches you how to remain the channel of abundance, even when what you see around you is still contradicting what you know to be true on the inside. You do not need to force any of this. You only need to return to it. Comment reset right now, and the guide will find you. There is one more thing before you go. What I have shared today gives you the foundation. The 5 habits that address financial struggle at the level of consciousness, but there is a deeper layer. A specific instruction I gave Neville about the way the imagination must be used, not just what to imagine, but the precise level at which the imaginal act must operate for it to carry the full weight of reality and begin moving the outer world with speed. Most people imagine from the outside, watching themselves receive what they want. That position keeps you outside the fulfilled state. There is a level of imagination, a specific depth of entry into the scene that is entirely different. At that level, the imaginal act does not feel like imagination, it feels like memory, and that is the level at which reality moves. The next video appearing on your screen right now is called The Visualization Level Abdullah Taught Neville to Shift Reality Fast. Everything you have just learned about consciousness and money becomes far more powerful when you add what that video teaches. It is on your screen now. Watch it next. I will see you there.